This is KMJ at KMJNow.com or wherever you stream. Welcome to the MARC KAPETAN Show. This is attorney Mark Kapetan, your host. Today's show is brought to you by the Kapetan Brothers Law Firm. We've been serving the Central Valley since 1995. If you or anybody you know has been injured in an auto accident, a truck accident, or a motorcycle accident, give us a call at 559-498-8000. Or if you've been arrested or cited for a criminal offense, call us at 559-498-8000. Kapetan Brothers. We are the Valley's Law Firm. Right, Marcella? We're the Valley's Law Firm. Yes, we are, Marcella says. Folks, it's another special day for me because I have a special guest and an old friend. It's been 30 years since the murder of Nicole Brown Simpson and the slow speed chase in the white Bronco and the trial of Heisman Trophy winner and pro football star O.J. Simpson. It was the trial of the century and has been the intrigue and study of a whole generation. It consumed the nation. It was on everyone's lips. I remember the verdict. I was in a Firebaugh courthouse. The judge took a break and we all went to the back and watched it on a small colored TV perched on a file cabinet. They said the words "not guilty" and we were shocked, as was much of the nation. The rest of the nation was elated. And that's how it was. And that's how, no matter how you saw it, it was from afar. You were either shocked or elated. But what if you were more intimately connected to the whole affair, as was my next guest? Michael Gilbert was O.J. Simpson's sports agent, and they were the best of friends. He was present in O.J.'s life before the murders, during the trial, and took part in the moving and secreting of O.J.'s memorabilia and personal effects, the items that were the family of victim Ron Goldman that they had sought to basically confiscate as part of their $33 million civil judgment. Those same items were the subject of the Las Vegas prosecution of O.J. that eventually led to his conviction and a 9-year sentence, 9 to, I think, 30-something year sentence, but he served 9 years in prison. Seeking representation in that Las Vegas matter, Mike Gilbert came to my office and hired the Kapetan brothers. I became his legal advisor, his life coach, and his friend. We spent months on late-night phone calls, long late-night phone calls, meetings in Las Vegas with district attorneys and sheriff's officers, and plane flights and limos to TV shows the likes of Dr. Phil and others. O.J. Simpson and the murders were a vortex that pulled Mike and others to a point that it sucked the very life from them. They lost family and friends in the path of the storm. And to tell his whole story is my old friend, Mike Gilbert. Welcome,
Hello,
Mike.
Mark.
Hi, buddy.
Good to see you again.
Good to see you. It's been a long time.
It has been.
You were just talking before you came on. The one memory that you had from back then that you still hang on to is what?
Well, there's so many. I mean, come on.
No, but this shaving cream?
Well, we were doing, I think it was the night before Dr. Phil, the morning of the show, and you called, you didn't have shaving cream, I didn't have shaving cream, so I volunteered to run down and get us a couple of cans. Little did I know that these cans that I bought 20-some years ago were going to be $4.99. I still have mine, and I look at it and I think, I still could buy this for 99 cents.
A little cheap thing of Barbasol or something like that?
It was Barbasol, yes, you're right. And every time I see that, I think, okay, Kapetan.
Marcella, we're going to get into the whole story, but he calls me. I'm at the office, and listen, this is deeply entrenched in the O.J. saga, sadly enough as it is. And he calls me at about 5 o'clock. Says, "What are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm driving home from work." "Do you have your suit on?" "Yeah." "Turn around and go to the airport." I go, "What?" He goes, "We're going to be on Dr. Phil tomorrow." I go, "Mike, BS. Come on. Don't quit jerking around." He goes, "No, we're going to be on Dr. Phil." And to your credit, what was interesting, and this is how loyal you are, is at one point Dr. Phil said, "Well, we just want Mike on the air." And you said, "I'm not going on unless my attorney goes on."
Exactly correct.
Yeah. We're going to talk about all that. So April 10th, 2024, you hear about the death of O.J. Simpson. What does that mean to you? What is it? Who tells you? What's your first thoughts?
My daughter had called, my daughter Lindsay called my son Luke. She, I guess, had tried calling me, and I didn't pick up. It's pretty early. And I just heard Luke say, "Dad, OJ is dead. He's passed away." And I remember thinking that I couldn't believe it. You know, I always thought that he and I would get back together and sit down and talk because we had always been so close.
And that was a question whether you have or not. But what's interesting is, did you ever have that idea that one day he's going to be dead and I'm still going to be alive? But what you're telling me, you thought at some point it may not be a reconciliation. It may not be a friendly conversation. Well, it may not be a conversation of acceptance, because I know you, of what may have occurred. But, and I'm going to relate it to the trial in Vegas later on, but it would be a conversation between two guys sitting down, and it would be like what?
Well, you have to understand, during, as you put it, the trial of the century, there was this inner circle of people. We didn't realize what was happening outside of that core.
Yeah.
You know, what the world saw was a little bit different. What we saw was just the 5 or 6 of us in this circle talking every day, every night. So with OJ,
I mean, were you really isolated in that sense? It literally was a bubble that you guys were in?
We were, absolutely. I know for instance, the day the verdict was going to be read, I was getting ready to leave. My wife and I were going to Hawaii. We thought we had 3 weeks before the verdict would be reached. You know,
wow.
All the experts said, 2 to 3 weeks. So we were taking off for a week to 10 days. And I was sitting at OJ's desk, and Skip was in his office right next to me. And Judy, our assistant, came running down the hallway. They reached a verdict, and we were so oblivious. We both stepped out of our offices, said, "Who?"
Yeah, what case?
who has a verdict? And she said, OJ. The OJ jury reached their verdict. We were shocked. And I think that was the first time I ever saw anyone that actually turned ashen. You know, the blood running out of their face. I looked at Skip. Skip looked at me and he said, "Mike, this isn't good." And he turned gray.
And Skip is?
He was a private attorney.
Okay.
He had been OJ's private attorney since he was in college.
So who was in that bubble?
Skip,
yeah,
Kathy Randa, OJ, Al Callings, myself. I was really maybe Gigi or Michelle, the housekeeper.
Right.
You know, just the people in that core that kind of knew everything and was privy to everything.
And you're saying at his home office or where?
No. It was at his office on San Vicente Boulevard, right by, just across the street from UCLA, you know, opposite side of the 405 freeway.
And so you get this news from your daughter, and you think, gee, I could have had this conversation. What would that conversation have consisted of?
I just thought we had more time. We had time to at least sit down and air the grievances, because I wanted him to know, OJ, all you had to do is call me. You had my number.
Regarding?
The items that were taken, that were stolen from my storage unit and eventually ended up in Las Vegas.
But Mike, people are going to have a hard time understanding this, because you're talking with a guy that is likely the murderer of his wife, who was also a friend or a person that you knew. I don't know how,
I knew her quite well.
Yeah. And in my line of business, you know, sitting down with a criminal, a murderer, a whatever, the most horrible of people is a normal thing. But most people won't understand that. And at some point, we're going to get into all the stresses that you had and all the agata from O.J. Simpson and this vortex that I think you and I came up with the term, and we talked about. And people are sitting here going, well, yeah, but how can you bring yourself to sit down and even think about sitting down and talking to a guy like that?
I guess, Mark, because I knew O.J. more than June 12th. O.J. Simpson was vastly more than the events of June 12th.
But isn't all that, looking back on it, fake? Or do you think there was some you talk about him being family and stuff like that, but
no, I don't think it was fake. I think it was duplicity. I think he had multiple facets to his personality, just like most people do. I think that OJ was a kind person. He had moments where he could be angry, pissed off, but you've seen me pissed.
Yes, that is true.
I know you have. But it's
it's interesting.
I knew different sides of him.
It's like, and we got to go to a break. It's like when I ask people, priests and attorneys and stuff, do you think people are people who make bad mistakes, or are they truly evil? And you say basically he makes mistakes, but he had a good side of him. We're going to talk a lot about that right after this. This is Mike Gilbert, OJ's former sports agent, on the Mark Kapetan Show. This is KMJ. This is News Talk 580 1059 KMJ. Welcome back to the Mark Kapetan Show. You can check us out at kmjnow.com or wherever you stream. You can check out the podcast. You could also find the Mark Kapetan Show on YouTube and on Facebook, where we do a video broadcast of today's show and all the shows in the past. So please like us and subscribe to us. Kapetan Brothers, folks, if you're looking for legal representation, and I'm going to pot this music down like I like to do on the second segment. If you're looking for legal representation, if you've been in an accident, you're injured, you're hurt, if you are arrested or cited for a criminal offense, it's a very, very scary time and you don't know what to do. And I tell people, just pick up the phone and call an attorney. Mike, I'm going to do a shameless plug. You picked up the phone and you called us. But what I'm saying with that, and we're on with Mike Gilbert, who is the former agent to O.J. Simpson. What I'm saying, folks, is you don't know what to do because it's not your job. You don't know. If I needed a plumber, I would call a plumber and I'd feel much better about the situation I'm in. And it's the same thing with an attorney. Don't put us on such a pedestal. It's just we know our job, we know what we're doing, and if you are injured or if you are seeking some help for an arrest or something like that, call the Kapetan Brothers. We'll put your mind at ease. We'll answer your questions. 559-498-8000, Kapetan Brothers. All right, we are back on with Mike Gilbert. He's the former sports agent to O.J. Simpson. He is an author, wrote the book, How I Helped O.J. Get Away with Murder, the shocking inside story of violence, loyalty, regret, and remorse. We're going to go ahead and talk about that. I remember reading it when I first met you, Mike. You had called our office, and I thought, there's some crazy guy who's saying he's OJ's manager and wants us to represent him. And I went and I read the whole damn book before I had my first meeting with you, or maybe the second meeting with you. So, am I the only one that read the book?
No. What's interesting is when I chose you or your firm, I did it for a reason. You weren't the first person I called. I researched and found, who do I want to be my face? Who do I want to represent me and be the person in front of me if I have to be in front of a jury, or as it was in Las Vegas?
Yeah, but Marcella, what he's not telling you is he saw the billboard and he thought we looked like basically like underwear models on those billboards. We look you said we look like LA attorneys, that we look like we could represent you.
But you had that look of what I wanted in a courtroom.
Do I have, with the long hair now, do I still have that same look?
Okay, I'm having second thoughts now. I do want my money back. No, I wouldn't have changed a thing, Mark. Although I have to say, I know the audience can't see it, but you're drinking out of this really nice Kapetan Brothers cup, and I'm over here with a styrofoam
cup.
I could have been treated a little bit better.
You could have dressed a little bit better too, so folks.
Okay, you got me. I thought this was just radio.
Listen, we joke around a lot, but I got to say, it was one of the most exciting times, but it is also one of the most stressful times, not only dealing with the case itself, but dealing with a guy who was going through a range of emotions that were really very, very intense, Marcella. It was intense late night discussions because Mike's world came crashing down. and he's going to talk about it from the very early age of idolizing OJ. We were talking during the before the break, basically. Do you think that OJ, and I'm going to say this generally as man in and of itself, but OJ in particular, was he a good man who made a mistake, or would he be what some people considered an evil man?
You know, Mark, I have idolized OJ from a young kid. Playing football before they made jerseys for kids. I would take a T-shirt out of my drawer and I'd write Simpson. I'd put 32 and I'd run out and play tackle football. Okay, I'm O.J. Simpson. So at a young age, I started following his career at SC all the way through Buffalo, the 49ers, and so forth. So for me, having followed him for that long, that's one of the questions that I still, as I sit here today, you know, we're a day away from the 30th anniversary of the homicides.
Right.
And I could not tell you if O.J. Simpson was a really good person that did a bad thing on June 12th, or was O.J. Simpson just a bad guy who occasionally could do very good things for people.
It sounds funny to have a something-year-old man basically saying about idolization of OJ, but you were a very, very young kid at the time, and it was formative years where you were building your sense of people and sense of trust and sense of who you thought you wanted to be like.
Yes.
And quite honestly, to the young people out there who don't know, if you're going to be like anybody, you couldn't have much better representative, because he truly was one of these guys that transcended anything. You could pick any pop star today or any athlete today, and they didn't have that quality that OJ had, enough that he was representing tons of different businesses in commercial advertising, and he was the smile that everybody wanted to be next to.
Correct. Well, he was the first African American that had a nationwide commercial, you know, when he had Hertz, but he had other directorships that he sat on. OJ was the precursor to Michael Jordan, or you know, people that you see nowadays on TV that you see various commercials.
Yeah.
And he opened the doors for those people now. And
he opened the doors, and I was talking to another on another episode of the MARC KAPETAN Show about the OJ case. He may not have been the greatest representative because he was an activist in many ways, but he was definitely the perfect guy for the time. He made no bones about it. You didn't think of him as the first black advertiser. You just thought of him as OJ, this great football player with this beautiful smile and this gorgeous face, and you know, and that he had it all.
Well, that's what he wanted to be. He didn't want to be an activist. He used to tell me, Mike, people were always mistaken. People would say, "Oh, OJ wants to be white." He never wanted to be white. He told me so. He said, when you think of a Martian, you think of green people, right? You don't think of people coming down from Mars being different colors. They're all going to be one race, one people. As long as we keep looking at people as being white and black or Hispanic and Asian and so forth, we're doing a disservice. He said, I didn't want to be white. I just didn't want to be a color. I just wanted to be known as O.J. Simpson, a good athlete, a nice guy that goes out of his way to be good to people. Isn't that a good thing? Which, to me, it is. I think that was a great quality. But he was underestimated, I think, because a lot of people did believe that he should have been a activist back in the 60s, especially the late 60s, during the riots in L.A., and I think it was 68, 69.
Yeah, but it likely wouldn't have worked. He wouldn't have had the effect of OJ, probably because, like you said, he had that thing that I just want to be colorless.
Right.
Which was a perfect thing for him. That's maybe why everybody loved him on all sides of the fence, as far as that was concerned.
I agree.
Yeah. All right, we'll be right back with Mike Gilbert from the former sports agent, friend, confidant of O.J. Simpson. Really very, very interesting stuff. I want you to be right back with us on the Mark Kapetan Show. This is KMJ. It's News Talk 580-1059 KMJ, KMJnow.com, or wherever you stream. Go check us out over there. Listen, welcome back to the Mark Kapetan Show. Today's show's sponsored by AmericanMadeConcerts.com. American Made Concerts. If you are looking for great rock and roll entertainment, go to AmericanMadeConcerts.com and check out their up-and-coming shows. They've got a lot of cool stuff coming up. Gilby Clark's coming up, a Metallica tribute called Damage Incorporated. AmericanMadeConcerts.com for all your rock and roll entertainment. AmericanMadeConcerts.com. We are back on with Michael Gilbert. Mike Gilbert is the former sports agent to O.J. Simpson and was his confidant back in the day. And also Mike and I have a personal relationship regarding the Las Vegas case that Mike and I worked on many years ago. He's also the author of How I Helped O.J. Get Away with Murder, the shocking inside story of violence, loyalty, regret, and remorse. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Again, getting to this conversation between a guy like O.J. In fact, you mentioned something really interesting, that it was the 72 Olympics and how O.J. wanted to be colorless, that he wanted to be just this shining example of, integrity and whatever you want to say. And he didn't want to be divisive when it came to race and stuff like that. And you mentioned a comment that he says that he told you when he saw the 72 Olympics with one athlete holding up the black glove.
Well, I think that was actually, now thinking about that, I think that was actually 1968. It was the Mexico City Olympics. And oddly enough, the person with the black glove, that was Tommy Smith, and last name was Carlos, if I remember correctly. They had broken the world record in the 200 meters at Mexico City, and they decided to bow their heads during the national anthem and wear the black leather glove and put their fist up. Same Olympics, George Foreman held an American flag when he won the heavyweight gold medal, and he waved the flag. So
right.
That Olympic cycle, O.J. actually could have been on that team, because at that time he was one of the fastest people in the world. In fact, most people don't realize this unless you're a SC fan. USC still has the world record, not just a collegiate record, but the world record for the 4x4 100-meter relay, or yard relay back then. OJ and just three other guys from SC set that record.
Oh, really?
And then it switched over to meters the next year, so that record still stands.
And so basically he had said if he would have been there, he would never have done anything like that.
Never.
That he didn't like it.
No, never.
All right. So this, getting back to this hypothetical, by the way, folks, we're going into a two-part show here. We're doing, you're going to see us next week also with Mike Gilbert, because this is just fascinating stuff. And I don't want you to get the impression that in any way he condones anything. Obviously, you don't condone anything that OJ may have done, but you are giving a perspective that most people just don't hear. So getting back to this hypothetical situation where sometime in the past 15 years, you and OJ had met up again and you had sat down with him, what's the first question you ask the guy? What do you want to know the most?
I would have actually asked why he didn't call me. Instead of setting this event up in the hotel room in Vegas, why didn't he call me?
Yeah, but okay, so what you're talking about is it's all out now. You, after the civil verdict and the $33 million was awarded to the Goldmans tried to collect. They hired David, what was his name, Cook, right? David Cook, right?
Well, there was a few different.
Right. And they tried to collect by taking every single asset that OJ ever had, including trying to find his Heisman Trophy, all his memorabilia that you were partly his memorabilia sports agent, and you sold, and you guys would do autograph signings and all that kind of stuff. And prior to them collecting all that stuff, you did what?
Well, a lot of the original items had been removed from his house, which the Goldmans, everyone knows that. For instance, the Heisman Trophy was removed from the house, and the nameplate that was on the original Heisman was taken off and hidden up until I was told either I had to turn the Heisman over or go to jail during Christmas. One year, my daughter asked the judge, "Don't put my daddy in jail." He had no choice. So he said, "Mike, I don't want to put you in jail, but if you don't turn it over." So I turned the trophy over, kept the nameplate. And what we wanted to do was take that nameplate that had O.J. Simpson on it to New York City, put it on another Heisman that was at the Downtown Athletic Club where they present the Heisman Trophy.
Okay.
And then do basically a proof of life where here's the Heisman Trophy, O.J.'s name, and here's the date of whatever the New York Times article was. That would then devalue the
original Heisman.
Yes, it was going to be auctioned off because they did have the original trophy.
Right.
And the reason we wanted to do that was to drop the value because what most people don't know, you probably do as an attorney, the amount of everything that was sold at that auction was basically income to O.J. Simpson that was then forfeited. So O.J. had to pay tax on that. So he wanted the value to be as low as possible.
Oh.
Which happened, I think the trophy sold for around $500,000 instead of what they thought $1 million to $1.5 million.
To avoid the taxes for OJ to pay.
Yes, so we did that, but that's kind of what agents do.
But you also took, and I'm going to get back to that, but
go
you also went and took all the remaining stuff in memorabilia, et cetera, and it was taken to a warehouse in, of all places, Hanford, California.
It was. A lot of his items were taken, although what was in that storage unit, Mark, remember, that was stolen from me, maybe 5% was actually OJ's. I had Babe Ruth and Neil Armstrong. I had a lot of other things of my personal collection that was there. So what was stolen from my storage unit and then taken to Vegas to be sold, which I didn't realize, of course, it had been sold. The person that sold it had been selling it for, I think, 10 months. I think we found that out when we got to Vegas.
Right.
You
didn't know they had broken into your warehouse and taken all these items.
No idea. Okay. I thought everything was there. I was paying on an empty storage unit for 10 months. But what happened, OJ didn't realize that a lot of the stuff that was in that room or was going to be in the room had been in his storage unit in South San Francisco, which we put there when, he lost Rockingham. We moved a lot of the furniture and furniture from New York as well that I moved out of his New York condo. That stuff had been moved to San Francisco. When his mother died, that automatic draft that came out of her account didn't come out. So that storage unit was auctioned off. He thought I had that stuff. I had no clue. But if he would have called me and said, "Hey, do you have baby pictures?" I would have been able to say no.
Eventually, and we're going to talk about that probably next week on the next show. Eventually, that all those items or the items that were in your storage becomes the subject of a Las Vegas case that we'll get into.
Right.
But let me backtrack again.
Sure.
You are taking the nameplate off the Heisman. Your daughter is saying, "Judge, don't put my daddy in jail." You're going through all these machinations after he's been found not guilty of murder, but guilty in the civil case. You've already suspected or had some sort of knowledge or suspicions or your doubts regarding OJ at this point. And you're helping this guy pull the wool over on the Goldmans.
Let me explain that. And there's no justification, but there's an explanation. Okay. I did that because at that point in time, I just remember the Goldman saying, leading up to the civil trial, this is not about money. This is not about taking money and becoming rich. This is holding him accountable. Because we didn't get him put in jail, we want to hold him accountable. Well, at that point, when they started taking items that I felt should have gone to his kids, you're not punishing OJ, you're punishing his heirs, his children, by taking footballs that he earned by being the MVP that year or what have you, various trophies and awards. So it did become about the money. So don't bullshit America. Don't lie to people and say it's not about money.
Right.
if it is about money. So when I saw the civil trial and it turned where this ridiculous judgment of $33.5 million, it was about money. So did I try to keep his original items away from the Goldmans? Well, it was the Goldmans and the Browns. I did.
Yeah.
I did.
But you have to have some sort of inner turmoil to sit there and say, yeah, I was doing that, and maybe I'm saying it was about his kids and things that rightfully belong to OJ's kids, but why at this point am I not washing my hands of this whole situation?
You know, you get in, I won't say you get in too deep, but at that point, I started seeing things that he was doing, and I know at one time I even told OJ, I said, OJ, when I eventually quit working with him, I said, as horrible as this sounds, I could forgive you for June 12th because I know what you were like the days leading up to that and how completely out of sorts you were and the medications that you were on. I could forgive you for what you did June 12th, but I can't forgive you for how you've been living your life since then.
We'll be right back with Mike Gilbert, former sports agent for O.J. Simpson, on the Mark Kapetan Show. This is KMJ. Welcome back to the Mark Kapetan Show. We are on with Michael Gilbert. Michael Gilbert is the former sports agent for O.J. Simpson and was his confidant. Also, he's the author of the book, How I Helped O.J. Get Away with Murder, the shocking inside story of violence, loyalty, regret, and remorse. You didn't like the title, from what I remember.
I did not.
Yeah. Let me move that mic. Learn how to say. How many interviews have you done? Put that mic in front of you. Yeah, exactly. Michael was a confidant, best friend of OJ, or, of the closest of friends of OJ. And we're going to get to one of those very, very close moments. We are going to be doing two parts, folks. We're going to be doing a second show. We're going to talk about the Las Vegas case next week and some face-to-face meetings, or at least court hearings where Mike and OJ and I was present. So we'll get into all that stuff next week. So I hope you're enjoying the show. All right, Mike, the verdict. Like I said in the beginning of the show, we're all seeing it from afar. When the verdict comes down and you hear not guilty, by the way, you took part in a very significant part of the case, and that was the bloody glove, probably the most famous thing. Johnny Cochran says, if the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit. If the glove don't fit, you must acquit.
Yes.
And you indicate in your book and before that day, you took part in a very significant thing about that.
It was quite by accident. I was sitting with OJ in the attorney room and explaining to OJ that he was going to have to put the glove on. And he said, Mike, I'm not putting the glove on. I said, no, you're going to put the glove on. Either we're going to put it on your hand or they are. And he said, Mike, I'm not going to put the glove on. It has Nicole's blood, and I'm not going to put my hand in there.
And you didn't get a sense is because he thought, I didn't do, or I did this, and that's why I don't want to put the glove on.
No. It was more the blood. And I said, look, if you're worried that the glove's going to fit, just don't take your arthritis medicine. And he said, Mike, my hands would hurt like hell. And I said, yeah. And,
they would swell.
Why? And, because his hands would instantly swell.
Right. And we don't know if that's the reason why they didn't fit. He had so stupidly, he had the rubber gloves underneath it, which was dumb. But
if the prosecution would have actually taken the picture that they had taken before he's even arrested.
Yeah.
If you remember, there was a picture of his hand.
Yeah, with the little cut on it.
Cuts on the knuckle. If they would have compared the picture from that day when he was putting his hand into the glove, you would have seen the knuckles were severely swollen. He could not have put his hand in a baseball glove.
Because they would swell up so much.
They were so swollen because of his arthritis. But it was inadvertent. I didn't go into the meeting with him that day thinking, that's not...
This is a way to beat the case.
Yeah, no, right. Not at all.
Yeah, God, I was going to think of something about that. So you don't think, when you write the book, How I Helped Him Get Away with Murder, that was just Not something that you had thought of earlier on. That was just something that just happened to be happenstance as far as that's concerned.
It just happened because I was trying to get him to realize that the gloves were going on his hands.
Yeah.
We didn't want to put the gloves on. We wanted the prosecution because, as you know, as an attorney, it's then their evidence.
Right.
And if it doesn't fit, people go back and they hearken to, if the glove doesn't fit, you must acquit. But Johnny, if the gloves would have slid right on OJ's hands, Johnny had another
a line.
He did. It was going
Right.
to be, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to look at any of you individually, but Mr. Simpson has lost over 22 pounds since he's been incarcerated. So if per your weight, if you lost that percentage of your weight, I bet you could go home and open your closets and put a lot of clothes on you haven't worn since you were in high school.
Oh, that's interesting.
And then he would chuckle, and of course, he'd get a little laugh out of the jury. So it didn't matter
Right.
if they fit or didn't fit. The key was getting the prosecution to put the gloves on, which Johnny kind of led Darden in the elevator.
Yeah.
He kind of like teased him into putting the gloves on, even though Marsh had already said, we're not going to put the gloves on. And Darden was goaded by Cochran. Right?
You think a lot of the loss in the case for the prosecution was strictly due to the prosecution themselves?
Of course it was.
You don't think it was
They
more
No, they over prosecuted. If they would have prosecuted OJ like a normal, just an everyday person, and they made him into the celebrity.
Right.
If you remember opening remarks, we don't want to be here. We don't want to prosecute OJ Simpson.
Right.
But, we have to. And then when they brought Christopher Darden in, that was kind of the capper.
Were you surprised by the verdict?
No, in fact, that day when I was, as I mentioned earlier, when I was sitting with Skip Taft in our offices on San Vicente Boulevard, when Skip said, Mike, this isn't good, and he turned ashen, I said, Skip, there's not a jury on earth going to convict OJ that fast. That fast.
Yeah, good point.
You're not going to take somebody as famous as OJ and as well-loved as OJ and convict him in 3 hours or whatever it was. It's not going to happen. So I felt it was not guilty. Odd thing was, once we got to the jail to talk to OJ, because Skip thought OJ'd be losing his mind, and a lot of people have said, oh, you guys knew what the verdict was the night before because supposedly the jury
had tipped you off somehow.
Well, they ordered pizza and stuff like that, and they wouldn't do that if it were guilty. Well, we had no idea. I guarantee you, because I was, along with Skip Taft, the last two people that left him that night before they read the verdict the next morning. We had no idea.
You eventually wrote the book. I'm going to save the confession that OJ made to you for the next show as a teaser. Of course, it's radio, folks. But you wrote your book basically in response. At some point, there's a turnaround where, and I think it's the book that he wrote said, "If I Did It." And was that the turning point for you?
It wasn't, Mark. It was once OJ got to Florida, it was very different than Los Angeles. In Los Angeles, he had Kathy Randa, he had Skip Taft, he had myself. He had that core to kind of keep him, from, I don't know how to say it, but
grounded?
Kind of keep him grounded. Once he got to Florida, we weren't there.
Yeah.
I wasn't there. Kathy wasn't there. Skip wasn't there. I would go out every few weeks, but it was just different. He was kind of left. He was basically like a rookie in the NFL, and I brought that up to him. I said, OJ, you're acting like you're a rookie in the NFL, you're 24 years old. You're going playing golf, you're doing blow, you're acting like you're going to strip clubs like an idiot. 30
seconds or so.
Sure. So I brought that up to him, how his life changed, and it did, and that was his downfall. So
it wasn't necessarily whether he had committed the murder or not. It was he was leading a life that didn't live up to what your childhood dreams were.
Well, he asked us, he said, Mike, I owe you everything. You lost millions because of me.
Yeah.
And I said, OJ, you don't owe me anything. All you owe me is to go and be the person I thought you were in America, thought you were before.
We'll be back next week with Mike Gilbert, the former agent for O.J. Simpson. We're going to talk about the Las Vegas case, and his meeting OJ again in the courtroom after years of being apart. This has been the Mark Kapetan Show on KMJ. We'll see you next week.